All right, welcome to The Explainer. You know that ritual we do twice a year, changing the clocks? It just feels like a normal part of life, right? But it turns out it's this super controversial topic that hits everything from our health to the economy. So today, we're going to unravel this whole time change conundrum.
So let's get right into it. The whole debate about whether we should just stop changing the clocks, it's gone all the way to the top levels of government. But, to really get a grip on where we might be going, we've got to look back at how we got here in the first place. Okay, first things first. What is this system that most of us just follow without thinking? And why was it even created?
The idea at its heart is pretty simple. The official definition says it's all about shifting daylight around. Think about it. We're basically grabbing an hour of sunlight from the super early morning when, let's be honest, a lot of us are still asleep, and we just tack it on to the end of the day.
And this is the part we all know and, well, maybe don't love. We lose that hour of sleep in March. But hey, we get those amazing long summer evenings. Then we get it back in November. And believe it or not, this one little change is what's fueling a massive debate all across the country.
So you might be wondering, where did this whole idea of, messing with time even come from? A lot of people think it has to do with farming, but that's actually a myth. The real story? It's all about trains and war.
All right, let's walk through this history. Before 1883, time was just a total mess. Can you imagine? Every single town had its own local time. The railroads couldn't handle that chaos, so they created the standard time zones we have today. Then, fast forward to World War I, and daylight saving gets introduced as a way to save fuel. It wasn't until 1966 that it became standardized across the country. But here's a super important part. In 1974, they tried making it permanent year-round, and it was a total disaster. People hated the dangerously dark winter mornings. And that lesson, well, it's going to be important later.
And that little piece of history brings us right to the big debate today. We know why it started, but does it actually make sense anymore? Is it really worth all the hassle and disruption? The arguments get pretty heated, actually, and both sides have some really solid points. So let's break it down and look at the pros and the cons.
Okay, what's so fascinating here is the massive tug of war it shows. On one hand, you've got the money argument. Businesses, especially in retail and tourism, they love that extra hour of evening daylight. They say it gets people out shopping and doing stuff, which boosts sales. But then on the other side, you've got this mountain of evidence about some pretty serious concerns for our health and safety. And we're not talking about small risks here. Get this. A report from the American Heart Association is pretty startling. It shows that on the Monday, right after we spring forward, hospitals see a 24% spike in heart attacks. A 24% jump. That one lost hour of sleep seems to put a huge strain on our bodies.
So with downsides that serious, it's really no wonder there's this huge push to just stop, to pick one time and stick with it all year long.
And that brings us to the main solution being talked about in Washington, the Sunshine Protection Act. The whole idea is to get rid of standard time completely and just stay on those summer hours year-round. It even passed the Senate unanimously back in 2022, but it's been stuck ever since. Why? Well, because of one giant unresolved question.
And this really is the biggest problem. Pretty much everyone agrees that switching back and forth is bad, but nobody can agree on what to do instead. Do we lock in those summer hours permanently, that's daylight saving time, or do we lock in the winter hours, that's standard time?
And this is where public opinion gets really interesting, and it might not be what you expect. Even though Congress is pushing for permanent daylight saving time with that Sunshine Protection Act, the polls show something different. A big chunk of Americans, look at that, 48%, they'd actually rather have permanent standard time. It seems they want more light in the morning, not the evening, probably remembering how awful those dark winter mornings were back in that '74 experiment.
Okay, before we wrap this up, let's do a quick lightning round and clear up a couple of things that always seem to trip people up. You hear people say it both ways all the time, but which one is it? Daylight saving time or daylight savings time? All right, here's the answer. It's singular. The correct name is daylight saving time. Think of it this way. The word saving is describing what you're doing. You are saving daylight. Putting the S on the end is super common, but technically it's not right.
Oh, and another thing to remember, not everybody in the US even does this whole clock changing thing. Yep, all of these states and territories have basically said, no thanks. They just stay on standard time the entire year. So they're kind of like a living experiment, showing us what it's like to ditch the switch.
And just to throw one last curveball in here, check out this perspective from an economics expert. He basically says, hey, maybe our current system, as annoying as it is actually a weird kind of compromise. The night owls get what they want in the summer with later sunsets, and the early birds get their bright mornings in the winter. Kind of makes you think, right?
So there you have it. What started with railroad schedules has turned into this huge debate in Congress, wrapped up in over 100 years of history, big money, and a lot of public health data. It seems like almost everyone agrees on one thing: the switching has got to stop. But that just leaves the real question for all of us. If we had to pick one, which time would you choose?